Visibility Hackers, welcome to this episode of the live show. I'm your host, Coach Molly from Visibility Hacking Studios, and this week's episode is really exciting, I think. One of my favorite things to talk about is building your brand, and that is what we're going to dive into today. But before we dive into all of that fun new information, let's talk about what is up and coming, what's exciting, what is this week's Visibility Hacker update. And in this update, we're going to tell you how excited we are that Live Academy Summer Camp Edition is officially launching. That is our 4-week visibility hacking Live Academy program, stretched out to give you a bit more of a leisurely summer edition. We'll be running it over 6 weeks this time, with some added coaches, with some great added resources to really get your show to the next level. The Live Academy program is all about building your connection machine, your live show, your stage for your audience to come see you, to build and establish and solidify your authority, to become the go-to expert in whatever niche, whatever industry you are in, regardless of how big your competition is, no matter how many followers your competition has, no matter their budget, no matter the difference. Because once you have a live show, you have your stage where your people will not only be attracted to you, but when they're there, you can also nurture them into your movement. So if you are interested in building your own live show with us during the Live Academy Summer Camp Edition, all you have to do is comment Summer Camp down in the comments and we will follow up with you. We're still working on our funnel page, so that is yet to be released to the public. But if you want in, you want to secure your spot before we've even launched officially to the world, then definitely comment down below Summer Camp and we will see you there, my friends. This week's quote of the week, we're getting really into branding this week, and we're going to look at a super successful businessman, Mr. Jeff Bezos. He says, when it comes to branding, he says, a brand for a company is like a reputation for a person. You can earn your reputation by trying to do hard things really well, or hard things well. And that applies regardless of how big or small your business is as well. Your brand is that reputation that we hold so dear as people, as individuals. We should do the same with our brand. And we're going to dive really, really deep into branding today. So keep that in mind. Your brand's reputation, your brand's personality is your brand's reputation. So what are you doing to make sure that reputation plays to your favor? Let's get going with today's episode. I'm going to make today's episode monologue really, really short because it really, we don't have a lot to cover. The bottom line is your brand is your brand's personality. Honestly, big question. If your brand was a person, would you go to their parties? Would you hang out with them? Would you call them when you needed them? Or would you avoid them because they add too much stress or you know they're going to take you in the wrong direction? What does your brand say about the work and the offers and the products and the services that you put out into the world? Are you in alignment with that brand? I work with a ton of different customers and clients who we go through these branding exercises and they do the deep, deep work of coming up with their brand in the first place. But then when we look at how they're applying it, it's completely disjunctured. It's completely disconnected. They may say that they are trying to appear as a trustworthy and innovative brand, but we see no brand consistency across their platforms. We do not see those brand values and those brand pillars actually represented. And it happens a lot in a variety of different size companies and organizations where you may have a complete disconnection between the message that you're trying to portray and the message that your consumers are actually translating out of the content that you're posting. So think about your brand ethos, your brand personality, your brand's voice coming through each and every piece of content you create. And we're going to dive into all of the things that you need to think about when building your brand in this episode. But before we do, I want to introduce you to one of our superstar Alive Academy students who started out with our program at the beginning of his business journey. He's been working for other companies for decades, but now he is charged with starting his own brand, bringing that into the market, taking control of his own business. And what he's been doing is very keenly looking around and observing what his ideal customer is struggling with. And now he's starting to build packages, products, and solutions for that market specifically. And well, we had a great time working together during the Live Academy program, and we will continue to work together because this student has signed up for our live stream conversions program, which takes your show to the next level. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you the one and only Mr. John Dargy, host of the brand new show, Home Office Rescue. Hey, John, welcome to the live show. It's so exciting to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Molly. Thank you for having me. Super excited when you called. It was like I finally get to sit down in a chair across from you and talk to you one-on-one again outside of the
Oh,
30
I
days.
love it. I love it. Yeah, we have spent the last month and a bit together really intensively working on building your live show. So before we talk about your show though, what was Live Academy like for you? What was that process like?
Oh, it was so cool for me. Like I'll be very, very transparent about this. So like what I came to, I knew Jim from a previous life. We're alumni and friends. But I'm watching you and Jim for I don't know, since November maybe. First it was like it first it was like, you know, what is all this crazy like graphics and stuff? Like it's just so much so loud, team loud or whatever, right? Like it's so loud and so like in my stream or in my news feed and Facebook. So I started watching Jim and I saw, obviously kind of met Jim, knew Jim, but it was kind of watching what you guys were doing. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then, their ideas and it went exactly like you preach. It was like, here's the park, right? I'm gonna put this content out there. And as I kind of walked through the park and I kind of saw these people over there playing hacky sack or whatever, and I kind of walk over to them, and it's you and Jim, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So I started kind of moving in towards January, and then eventually got to a point just before April where it was like, yeah, I would really like to do what they do. It's really cool and amazing. But Jim, I need a brand. I need a brand. That's what I need. That's all I care about. Week one, we talking about brand. So it was literally like this progression, exactly like we said. And when I started doing it, 100% on point for what I was looking for, and the results have been unbelievable, right? Like you've seen the first show, I think, and I was like, wow, this is like your. So I can get in more detail, but at 10,000 feet, it was incredible.
Well, tell us more about the results that you've gotten since you joined the program.
Yeah, sure. So, um, in terms of camera confidence, there was actually a couple things going on there. So I actually, there's, in my opinion, this is the world according to John. This is probably one of the hardest parts. Like you can have some of the very best equipment on the planet, such as I do, and still be deathly afraid to be in front of it talking to it. And you can't just bottle that up and give that to somebody. I wish you could. There's tricks and hacks and things we can do, but there's just a process there. And so for 30 days, working with Junaid and the guys at the Home Studio Mastery Group, that was like a challenge to do a video every day. So I did that at the same time as working with you and Jim on the actual mechanics. Like what's going on behind the camera? What's the, first of all, the why. What is it you're trying to do? What are your goals? What do you believe? What are you trying to cover? And we cover that right out the gate. So I think it's called the IPEC. I don't remember exactly what it stands for, but
Yep.
the IPEC
IPEC
framework.
goals.
All I remember was a come to Jesus on who we're about, what we're trying to do, what's everything on. Perfect timing, perfect tool. Then it was, okay, let's start talking about the mechanics. Like, what do you plan to do? What's your show going to be called? What is the goal? And there's a bit of that part's not easy, especially for someone like me who has an idea but doesn't really have like a business already established and whatever else. I mean, it's wide open, right, in terms of what it could be. And that's where you and Jim stood up, just stepped up again. It was like, all right, let's start funneling it down, start funneling it down. And eventually landed on this place, in my case, where it was like, hey, John, you're helping people do upgrade their audio and video. That's kind of fundamentally what you're doing. You've been talking about this idea. You've been inspired by like this kitchen nightmares or sort of home, bar rescue or home office makeover. Like, well, actually, that's where we landed. So it's like home office rescue is where we landed. And then once all those things kind of connected, it was like, boom, I know exactly what I want to do. And then we go to the next step, which is how do you build stuff into it? How do you plan for the next 12 months? There's a framework and a process for creating content. So you always got an ace up your sleeve somewhere, which is gigantic for somebody who's trying to create content on a regular basis. Because as I can tell you, from working 30 days, doing something every day, racking your brain every day, trying to figure out what you're going to say and how you're going to do it all on the fly, that's a high stress lifestyle. Right? So it can be, especially when you're doing other things. So in the Live Academy, that's what was next. It was really talking about, let me get the plan. Let's put the plan down on paper. Yeah, you still have to do the work, but if you start putting in the big stones, all the big stones go in, you kind of can focus more on the little stones to get you there. And that was part of the, so it's all this back end stuff that you don't really appreciate until you have to face it, until you're actually dealing with, like, I got a show that's going to live in perpetuity. How do I preserve it? All of a sudden that tool becomes exceptionally valuable.
Yep.
Week 3, week 4, started putting rubber on the road. Week 1, we start telling Molly, I want a brand. This is what I got. She gives me this tool. She says, this is a tool. My kids love it. It's called Coolers. It's an incredible tool. Never knew it existed. My kids beg to play with it all the time because you can pick these colors. So we do all this work in week 1. We hand all these assets over to Molly. And by about week 3, there's like templates and overlays and assets. And what you did with what I gave you was pure genius, truly. Like your logo, oh my God. Like this is the part I started getting excited about, because like your visual creative that you brought to the party, everybody was, it was all their own brands. Like, people had like this really kind of clean wood office look. They had this sort of green, fresh, kind of clean look. And then, it's me and whatever I'm doing. But everybody got their own template. Everybody got their own overlays, their own logos, their own brands that you could easily see going on a t-shirt or, or whatever. I mean, it was just super on point in quality and amazing. And I don't know if anybody who kind of went through those steps is like, I'm sure they're just absolutely thrilled, because I'm thinking about how to build on them. Like, I'm gonna put these videos in there and do, but I know I got the greatest starter kit in the entire world. I never could have done that by myself. It was amazing.
I love what happens when students get their graphics. We talk about brand, people dip their toe into it with
Yeah.
the activities we do, where we get them to come up with what their brand colors are, what fonts. We talk about something for our non-Live Academy students. We talk about something called the font mullet. You're going to have to join us in the program to figure out what that is, but it's essential to creating that brand. And when I hand back the logos and the overlays and the templates and all of that to the students, the level of confidence in their message absolutely changes, because now they know they look as professional as they feel. And I love that experience.
I can't even begin to stress how correct you are. Like, I've been sprinkling my brand all over social media now. Like, the mullet thing is 100% on. And everywhere you look now, everywhere there's something that I want to have a bit of influence, that activity is reflecting. It's there. So you're right on the money.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Would you recommend Live Academy? And if you would, who would you recommend it to?
Yeah, 100%. So I'm a big fan well, maybe I step back a little bit. So what I recommend. So yes. So first of all, absolutely, 100%. Now, why? So many reasons. Right. Let's start with the market ones. Over the last 3 to 5 years, I've watched the industry and the market for streaming grow exponentially.
Mm.
So, it doesn't matter what time of day on my Facebook feed, one of my friends somewhere is going to be doing something live. And even not, like, maybe they have a YouTube channel or whatever else. But the point being that there's this new way of getting content or way of connecting with people out there through these engagements. And I actually got real interested in things like this for what Web Meeting Pro is actually about and what inspired me. But when I started looking out beyond what I'm looking at, I'm going, man, this is everywhere. You told me the other day it was 40 billion or something like that. I was like, well, that makes sense. It's everywhere. And like a lot of things, just because the technology exists doesn't mean it's valuable. It doesn't mean it works. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean, like we were joking earlier about, how I laugh, I work in augmented reality for enterprise, but when I see things like, the Yoda ears coming out of Snap, I'm like, well, it's fun, but how are you actually going to do work with it? How does it actually do something for your business?
Right.
And that's what I saw with you and Jim in Live Academy was, here's this great technology, a lot of people interested in it. Here's how you wield it for good, so to speak. Right? Here's how you wield it in such a way. And as you guys put it, content for the sake of connection.
Yeah.
Now, as somebody who's gone through this process recently, it's unbelievable. It's really like that. That's part of the why. There's this thing, that this connection. You start to realize how to wield this technology for more of a purpose, and you start to see how it starts to fit together. And all of a sudden, it goes from, hey, this kind of neat technology that exists out there called live streaming, to this is a weapon in your toolbox as a business owner that is rapidly becoming one of the more important ones, in terms of how to do business development and how to make connections and and there's so many peripherals too, how to find others who are actually doing the same thing, how to, I mean, it just keeps going on and on. And you guys, in terms of that extra bit of value, that's the why. And then at the end, I have a show. I'm very proud of it. I have, as well as I do. I'm like, well, I don't know about StreamYard. I want to do OBS and I want this and I want that. But I'm glad we did it this way because there's no questions. It's easy to use. It's beautiful. It's very much where I actually am in terms of my journey. Like, I'm not, I haven't been doing, remote video production for people for 20 years or anything. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I can do it. I can handle it. And it's pretty easy to use. And it's just kind of inspired me to go, like, you use things like Stream Deck, use things like other technologies just to make it easier and better as time goes on for people. So yeah, I mean, I
Absolutely.
think if that's why it's I saw what was going on. There was this incredible attraction. There was all these things. And at the end of the day, it's after kind of going through it, like, the value is, um, the brand itself would have been worth the price of admission. Like truly, like the brand itself would have been price of admission. You got all those things on top of it. So it was
I
incredible.
love it. So tell us about your show.
Yeah, sure. So, as I was kind of alluding to earlier, this idea of helping people, and well, maybe take a step back a little bit, and maybe kind of talk about what inspired me, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
so I've been doing this thing during the day where I'm on the, I actually transplanted to working at home maybe 3 or 4 months before the pandemic started.
Mm.
So I had a little bit of a head start, but it was 100% new to me. Like, I never worked at home before. I'd actually had a very large team at my previous organization, like 50 people that I worked with in my team. And, so it was very different. Make this change because I believed in the technology and I was interested in making those changes. And I kind of saw what I saw at first, which was, when I actually had people on my team who were like in this position, like, you're the guy who's in the field. maybe you missed that meeting because we forgot about you, or maybe you missed that conversation at the water cooler because you weren't there. And so you don't have all the context. You're not on the in crowd. That's where it was when I started. Fast forward 4 months to February, March timeframe, and the lockdowns start happening and everything else. Everything changed overnight, like literally overnight. So I started getting invited to more meetings and things because now everybody was working at home, and it was very fast. It was like it just happened overnight, effectively. So there was this sort of strain on the infrastructure, VPNs and corporate systems, and all these things were just sort of trying to deal with it, including people like, the first several months, people, they would have their kids in the background because they were home, and there was very
Yep.
surreal because this
Yep.
was business. This is what we did every day. We used to wear ties and whatever else. Now we're doing this thing on the web where we're talking to people with their kids dancing in the background. Okay. That's what happened in like 3 months.
Yep.
And I think over time, that just sort of became what was understood and accepted. We're all in this together type of mentality. And that's sort of the culture that sort of grew up with the remote presence. And it still persists even now. Like there's not a lot of thought about it in my mind. But I think what I saw about a year ago was I've been doing this for a few years now. I got well over 3,000 hours in Zoom. I'm starting to see that you do this all day, you do this every day. The person on the other end, they don't turn their camera on, or
Yep.
maybe I'm looking up their nose because they're keeping their camera's right between where the thing is, and so I can see their hands doing this, and I can see up their nose. And it becomes a lot less about, like you have to be there. This is your job. But man, is it hard to care when you see all this stuff happening all the time, every day, all day, every day. It's my version of the Zoom fatigue, right? It's not,
Yep.
it's not a, there is something to sitting up all day and talking to the camera all day. And, this is watching everybody else going like,
Yep.
man, I can't, how do I pay attention? How do I care? Because these people,
Yep.
they don't care. It's
Yep.
in some reason, and I guess the real challenge for me was, it's not like they don't know they don't care, right? Like
Yep.
they actually get up, they get dressed, they put on the really nice outfit, they comb their hair, they look great, and then they get in front of this camera, and that last mile, right, like to the actual customer, they were looking up their nose, we're doing all these things that just make it so it's all sabotaged, right? So
Yep.
I kind of have this epiphany. I'm like, okay, what does it look like if you want to be a professional in these meetings and you want to tell clients and you want to capture their attention, you want to keep them with you? We've gone through this Zoom fatigue. Heck, if you just do a few things right, you're going to stand out. Like if you
Yeah,
just
and
do a
it's
few
kind
things.
of like these big enterprises, at least, they're spending millions of dollars building beautiful lobbies and nice boardrooms and conference rooms for when their clients show up in person. They are wowed by the experience. But it's like that was not translating when we jumped online.
No,
When we ended up
no.
in our home offices, we no longer were paying as much attention to that full experience as we really should have been. And you were the one who keenly observed that there was a hole in the market.
That's truly what I believe. I mean, I'll tell you right now, like I've done this stuff and I get stopped. Like I've told a few stories in the last few weeks. I get stopped by like these Fortune 50, it's gigantic monster company. They'll stop a meeting and say, "What kind of camera do you use and what's happening?" Like because it's one of
Yeah,
one. You get instant visual authority, instant.
yeah,
It's almost kind of like yours to lose at that point. Like
yeah,
you can like you show up with looking that good. They already know you're put together. I mean, you're getting certain things already just built in. So
absolutely.
been doing it, been experiencing it, been living it. Now it's like, okay, well, I want to help others. I want to, like, there's this hole in the market or whatever you want to call it. Like there's this thing where, well, by the way, if you think about it for your daily job, you can actually think about it for everything else because it's the same camera you're going to do for the YouTube video or whatever. It's going to be the same. So if you're thinking about all the other channels, you're actually getting a gigantic um, multiplier. Maybe you're thinking about it for your meetings, but it also is things that you can leverage for other places online to really stand out. And so this idea of kind of helping people get to that level the transformation was inspired by the shows, home office. So it became home office rescue, just in the vein of like kitchen nightmares or bar rescue or, home office, home makeover or whatever, or
So
home
for
office
those of you
rescue.
who don't understand, what we're looking at is we're inspired with John's show. We're inspired by these reality shows where these experts go into these different businesses, figure out what's going wrong, and give them their expertise and a plan to fix it. So what John's doing is helping these other entrepreneurs and these business leaders and these visionary leaders change up what they're doing wrong in terms of how they're communicating in their virtual meetings, and that translates in so many different ways to all of the different kinds of content that they could and should be
Mhm.
creating for their brands. And it's so important because, as we've already talked about, so many people forget that part of the journey. So what has it been like having a show?
Okay, so it's been exciting and fun because I feel like part of me is a performer. I During the day I do demos, I talk to people all day. It's this one-on-one situation, and so, but anybody who's spent any time with me knows that I love people, I love talking, I love engaging, I love all those things. And so, I don't think I have the audience big enough yet, or reason enough where I'll actually be able to do a lot of this like right this second. But I see it all day. Like I see you guys doing it, I see other people doing it, and I go, okay, my show will be very, there'll be the plan. We talked about it, but it'll also be like, okay, so somebody asks a question that makes sense, and it maybe takes a left and takes a right, or we're actually helping somebody. These hot seat idea, like, hey, we're helping people. I cannot wait to do it because I've been doing it. I just haven't done it this way, and now it's a chance to kind of not only help the person who's sitting there, but also people who might be inspired by it or other people who are interested. And it just feels amazing because I feel like that's my goal right now. Like that's
Yeah.
100% what it is. Make these
Yeah.
people, like to help people really take advantage of the channel in ways that they hadn't, this media channel in ways that maybe they haven't done before.
Yeah. I think having a live show is so cool, especially for those who come from the coaching industry, because they're used to working one on one with people. They're used to drilling down, figuring out what the problem is, finding a solution, and taking action on that. But when you translate that to a live show, not only do you get to impact the person you're working one on one with, but you get to then have that ripple effect to everyone who's watching as well, which just it's a force multiplier. It
Exactly.
really
Yeah.
does change the dynamic completely, which is so cool.
And I think I'm starting to see this now. And I'm gonna put this out there because I think this is actually happening as we speak. This is where I'm at in my journey, right? My friends who I've been doing 30 days of video with and who have been putting my live stream, like all these people in my orbit, like in Facebook, they're starting to transform. They always know I was a good guy or whatever, or like maybe I like shooting video or whatever. Like there's things that you communicate naturally, but by having the show, they go, oh, he's really serious about this. This is what he's actually putting his time in, or he or she or whoever. Like this is what they're putting their time into. So you can kind of broadcast the fact that you're an expert without having to tell anybody. Like I'm an expert. Like it's like they see it, they understand it, they know who you are. You're the go-to person, without even having to. You put yourself out there, but you're only doing what you wanted to do anyways. Like,
Yeah,
you're just helping people get look better on the
exactly.
web. So
And
I
no
think that's
one
the
likes the
power.
feeling of slimy sales,
Oh
right?
no,
And
God
I
no.
love the fact that live shows have enabled me to fire my entire sales team. I don't do outbound sales at all because I've built the stage and people now come to us because they see our authority.
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
is just around the corner for you, my friend, which is so exciting. So exciting.
yeah. That's it. Long story short, it's amazing. I can't wait to really start pushing it. Except there's a lot of ways, and I think the next couple of weeks are gonna be really exciting for me because it's like there's two things going on. It's me helping people, but it's also like kind of telling my story a little bit too of like how I'm growing as an entrepreneur and kind of saying like here's where we are. Here's how we're solving problems, and you can actually
Yeah.
kind of show people how you work on top of it all.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that because so many people come to us thinking, I'm not already a 10K a month entrepreneur. So I
No.
don't think having a live show is the right fit. I don't have a voice. I haven't found it yet. I don't see myself as an expert yet. But the truth be told is if you build that stage, you get to practice your voice, you get to practice your message, and you get to go out there and try your expertise in a whole variety of different industries, niches, till you'll really find what resonates with your people. And then the next entrepreneur that comes up who is a 10K earner, who really is niched down already, they're able to use the same tools, the same program to really amplify their message. It doesn't matter if you're just starting out or if you've been doing this for decades. A live show is really the place to get your message amplified, to find that voice, and to connect with the next level of customers for you, which is, I love it. So
Well,
excited.
let me say for the record, my brother, who is a serial entrepreneur, takes action on everything, is a very crazy kid. He criticizes me all the time. He's like, "You don't do anything. You just talk about it and think about it all the time. You just think about it. You just think about it." And he's some of it's granted. This idea I've been had it's at least a year in the making. In less than 30 days, went from idea to a tangible starting place in terms of brand, message, content. So that could be in a little bit of evidence that, yeah, I mean, even if you're thinking about something, it's going to
Yep.
bring it to a focal point of really seeing things you're going to appreciate, which is exactly my experience.
I love it. So how can people get into your world, John, if they want to know more?
Yeah. So again, part of this next phase is really understanding where to go and how to, kind of build up the infrastructure, as I call it, like my webpage and whatnot. Best place right now, I would say, is join my Facebook group. Join the Web Meeting Pro Facebook group. Right now, it's pretty open. There's a lot of, I would say the people that are there are very much people that I'm trying to bring in, trying to talk to. Um, I'm going to be going into a lot of detail there about what I'm doing, what I'm not doing. That's probably where the incubator will be. I've also kind of really believe that a lot of this is going to be on LinkedIn. So there's a LinkedIn channel as well. If you're interested, feel free to join that or feel free to like that page. But right now, I would say uh, Facebook group is a great place to start, and we'll be building out from there.
Amazing. We'll put those links down in the description, my friends. Definitely check them out. John, thank you so much for joining us today.
It was my pleasure, Molly. Thanks for having me. And yeah, you guys did absolutely incredible. Super super excited to be working with you and to be working with you in the future. So it's been phenomenal.
That's the perfect way to spill the tea, guys. If you haven't already signed up for Live Academy Summer Camp Edition, we have brought on more coaches to give you guys even more value. And John is our tech coach, so you like what he's putting down in terms of his cameras, his sound, his the whole atmosphere that he brings with his studio. You can get your studio upgraded as well. So join us for the Summer Camp Edition. Links will be down in the description. But yeah. Yeah. You're not done with us, John. We still got more. Oh, what a fantastic conversation with John, my friends. What a fantastic conversation. So, while I fix up our screen here, let's talk about the top 10 brand building must haves. These are the things that you definitely have to have when you are thinking through your brand. We're talking about this at a high level, but I promise you, this is going to feel really intimidating because I bet if you are an entrepreneur, if you're a solopreneur, if you're a mompreneur, if you're doing this on your own, if you are bootstrapping your business, I bet you are missing part of your brand. So let's talk about it. Why not? So, the first thing I want you to think about in terms of building your brand is what are your brand values? We've heard the term brand values tossed around here and there, but what does it actually mean? First, here's an example of some different types of brand values. When you work in the Live Academy program, what we do is we give you a giant exercise in order to solidify your brand values. But here are some examples. Maybe your brand values kindness. Maybe it values the feeling of belonging, and you work specifically to make that feeling happen. Maybe it's about optimism or innovation, and you see the world and you see problems that your customers are facing in a different light. Maybe you bring a level of energy that your brand competitors don't have. Or maybe you focus on family and that separates you from the rest of the crowd. So think about what those core values are that hold up your brand. Because remember, if your brand was a person, would you hang out with them? Would they share those same common values as you? Think about that in terms of your own brand. And of course, you can always, as you go through this list with me, you can always put your comments down in the comments. Let's shout you out. Let's see what kind of awesome brand values you guys have. I personally recommend having 3 to 5 brand values for your brand, and making sure that they don't necessarily contradict each other. All right, now let's talk about your brand's personality. This goes another step deeper. Remember, if your brand was a person, this is their personality. So we can have sincerity. Sincerity would be something that makes people feel wholesome, honest, and positive, going back to those values we just talked about. Your brand's personality might be excitement, where we're talking about the values of being lively, exciting, and willing to take chances, being daring. Your brand might also have the personality of being competent, where you're showing that you are reliable, successful, and intelligent. Maybe your brand personality is all about sophistication. You're about being high end. You're about being charming. You're about that feeling and experience of luxury. Or maybe on a different note, your brand is very rugged. The Lenny and Gooster brand, for example, is much more on this ruggedness feel in their personality. It's tougher, it's adventurous, it's unconventional, it's outdoorsy, it's a survivor. What is your brand's personality? Of course, you can piggyback off of these examples, or maybe you have your own brand personality words that you'd like to use. Let us know down in the comments. Now let's talk about your brand's voice. I know these all sound very similar to each other, but when we go through the process and we think of each of these separately, it really does help us better understand our brand holistically. So your brand voice might be passionate, could be quirky, could be irrelevant, could be authentic. These are just examples for you to grab some inspiration. So if your brand voice is passionate, you're using that statement that we are passionate about changing the way the world works. We are excited. We are devoted to our cause. Maybe you're quirky, which means you're saying things like, we are not afraid to challenge the status quo, and we're not afraid to be ourselves, authentically ourselves. Maybe your brand is irreverent and you say, we take our products seriously, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. This is a subset of quirkiness, for example. Or maybe you're taking your brand in a different direction and your brand voice is rather authentic. This is where you're saying things like, we're going to give you the tools and the insights that you need to make your job easier. This may not always be through our products. We are creating a lifestyle, a brand. We are going much bigger than just the individual product that we're selling you. This is a beautiful place to live. Now let's talk about brand promises. This is another thing that is essential to the fullness of your brand. What are you promising your people? Brand promises come in different areas. So we could have a social promise, which is a promise based on ethical or social responsibility. We can have a global promise, which is a promise to a much more larger global citizenship and responsibility on a global scale. We could also have emotional promises, which is a promise that appeals to one's emotional side. We can also, of course, have functional promises, which are tied to specific actions or tied to specific features within our products or benefits. So what are your brand promises? Try to think about a promise in each of these different levels to really round out your brand's identity. Brand promises. Let's talk about examples of these. We all know these 3 brands, Starbucks, Apple, and Nike, but do you know their brand promises? Starbucks, to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, one neighborhood at a time. You may agree or disagree with Starbucks as a brand and entity of itself, but their mission, their promise to their people is that they are going to care about the human spirit. They are going to do what needs to be done to nurture that environment. On the other hand, we have Apple. They have a much more succinct, much shorter brand promise, and that is to think differently. And that is very innovative in the way that they approach their promise. And on the other hand, we have Nike, which is to inspire every athlete in the world. Now, you might have thought that Nike's promise is to just do it. That is their slogan. It is different than the promise they have. The promise is rooted a lot more in values than your slogan would be. Your slogan takes that promise to the next level. Now let's talk about brand positioning, because a lot of people do this wrong. I want you to think about this three-way Venn diagram. On one part, we have what your consumers actually want. This is what we gather from all of that market research that we put in. On the other hand, we also have, what does your brand do amazingly? What is your brand's superpower, in other words? And that third circle is going to be what your competitors do best. What your competitor brands are doing that they are fan-friggin-tastic at. So those are your three circles in your Venn diagram. Now, where I want you to focus your energy is not on what your competitors want that, or what your customers want that your competitors are really good at. That's a waste of time. You also don't want to do what your brand is best at that also matches and overlaps with what your competitors are best at, because that's going to be a lot of difficult work. You could position yourself directly in the center. That's really, really risky to try and meet all of those needs. But if we push our competitors out of the way and we position ourselves as the go-to solution for your ideal customers, that's when you're going to find yourself in the beautiful winning zone between what your customers really want and what you are amazing at. So I want you to think about how you can position your brand in that space. Now let's talk about brand guidelines, because we're going to start talking about consistency of spreading that brand message. We want your brand to be recognizable. And the way that we do that from the back end, you may not have had the opportunity to work with a graphic designer or to work with a brand manager or a brand strategist who's really going to help you see what your brand looks like and help you translate what feels really theoretical in terms of our promises and our personality and our voice, and start to make it real and tangible, visual, have that authority built. And we do that through consistency by having brand guidelines. This is where we're literally going to create a document that lists what are our brand colors, what are our brand fonts, where do we use them, what are our logo variations, and where do we use each of them, what is our graphic standards, what kinds of images, graphics, etc. are we going to utilize across our platforms and across our content, so our viewers recognize our brand instantly. Same thing goes for any photography that we're using. It's really neat to just go deep dive into how different brands use photography, but we don't have time for that today. If you are interested, definitely let me know in the comments, and I will happily put another episode together for you guys. Now let's talk a little bit more towards my heart, which is brand activism. This we could teach an entire seminar on, but we're not going to. We're going to get through this nice and quick. But look at this matrix here. This is from a fantastic book that you guys need to get your hands on that focuses entirely on brand activism. So on the bottom corner here, we have low cost, we have low impact as well. So we have external impact and internal impact. Internal meaning inside of your organization, external meaning the greater world around you. So with low external and low internal impact, we have the good citizen, which is the company participating in corporate social responsibility. I could teach a whole lecture on that, but we're not going to right now. If we add into internal impact within our organizations, we have our mission statements, that sense of purpose we have. Now, how do we make sure that our brands and our organizations and the work that we're putting into the world actually makes a difference in the world? Well, that's where we're going to look to increase our external impact. So if we go external impact high, internal impact low, we have cause marketing. This is where we're creating campaigns that are based around good things to do, advocating for greater causes. Now, if we really want to make a difference, both externally and internally within our organizations, that's when we're switching and we're looking at how our brands can fix the problems out in the world. That's where we're looking for brand activism and justice. And if you think that your brand fits into any part of these categories, definitely let me know down below. Now let's talk about brand ambassadors, one of the greatest things that you could ever introduce into your brand's ecosystem. Brand ambassadors are fantastic. They are trusted by consumers. They create and share content for you so you don't have to spend the time doing that. They promote your offers and your products authentically because they're actual solutions to the problems that they in fact are facing. Having brand ambassadors also helps expand your reach. Your brand ambassadors can be external influencers that you have a paid or agreed upon campaign with. Or on the other hand, the best at brand ambassadors are your customers. They will share to their audience, widening your reach, expanding your reach, and getting your offers put in front of more of the right kinds of customers. They also offer you really authentic feedback that helps you create better products and better offers for your specific market. And of course, they're the most cost-effective way to grow your reach, to grow your brand, and to grow your capacity. So look for brand ambassadors, look for those beautiful moments. Let's talk about brand collaborations. These are fantastic. I love them. Here's some great examples. Have you ever heard of the brand Supreme? It's a brand that's entirely based on collaborations, which is pretty cool. We've all seen the collaborations between Kentucky Fried Chicken, for example, and the Beyond Meat brand. They're coming together to create Beyond Fried Chicken. We can see a personal favorite of my own is Arizona Iced Tea. Long backstory behind that. But what we can see here is that Adidas and Arizona Iced Tea did a really cool brand collaboration, which ended up in these beautiful Arizona Iced Tea looking Adidas shoes. So look for ways that you can spice up your brand, collaborating with other brands who meet your same market. And then finally, brand unity. The big question is, does your brand show up consistently across all of your platforms with all of your different types of content? Whether you're creating short form or long form content, whether you're doing a video podcast or a live show, whether you're just posting up photos or graphics, it does not matter. Does your brand speak consistently across all of those platforms is the only question that you should be asking. Now let's dive into our next part of today's episode. Welcome back. This week's how-to features our favorite guest, Mr. John Dargy. We're going to talk about how to instantly build what we like to call visual authority for your next web meeting. And I got the pro himself right here. So John, when we were talking about this previously, I threw out a word that I thought would be absolutely step number one. And you actually said that you completely disagree. My step one doesn't even fit on your list at all. So my step one would be cameras. And you're telling me I'm completely wrong. Tell me why I'm wrong, and then tell us what your three would be.
Okay, so cameras is definitely part of the equation somewhere, but it's not even the first. It's not even close. And the first thing for best visual authority is a microphone, a good, solid audio source. And so a couple of reasons why. I spend time in meetings all day long. How many people don't even turn the camera on?
Yeah.
Right? At least about a third of them don't even include visuals at all, but they 100% include audio. So if your audio is point spot on, by the way, there's more to it, right? So there's all kinds of research that shows a perfect video with marginal audio will only be tolerated for so long. decent video with outstanding audio can go for quite some time. So number one, get that audio. Number two is actually the angle, right? So you have a camera, you're already here. Whatever you have, putting that camera in the right spot for what you're trying to do. Number two.
You
So
mean like I shouldn't have my camera facing right up my nose or on my fingers on my keyboard?
yeah, that's like my least favorite. You want to like just scare somebody off, man. I'm not entirely sure how you can do it any better than that. But yes, that's exactly. If for business, eye to eye. You don't want to be down looking. You don't want to be looking down at somebody, right? You don't want that
Yeah.
makes you look small. It looks weak. For business, eye to eye. Maybe just a little bit on top, about 2 fists below, framed, dead nuts, eye to eye for business. Number two. Number three, you can actually do a lot with the camera you have if you just put the lights in the right place. And so having a little bit of strategy on how to use what you have, or if you're going to make the investments, lighting actually is it definitely lets you get the most out of the equipment you have if you know how to do it right. And so 1, 2, 3, audio, position, lighting.
Fantastic. That's a super simple how to, my friend. So, 3 simple steps, get on it. And if you implement these simple steps, definitely throw us a photo of your best visual authority in your meeting. Throw it over in the Visibility Hackers Facebook group. Come join us. We'd love to see you over there. Oh, better. It's better when I turn the volume on. My big brand tip, my hot tip for you this week, my friends, is to ensure that you are allowing your brand to grow and evolve with you. If you don't have solid answers for all of those different 10 aspects of your brand that we talked about earlier this episode, do not allow that to become an excuse. Make sure that you are taking steps to grow and evolve your brand. Visually, it's a really cool thing that happens when it comes to building community with your customers in your brand. They will see the evolution of your brand. They will buy into it because they are along for the ride. So do not let perfectionism get in your way of growing your brand. My final thoughts for this episode, my friends, is to ensure that you are thinking about your brand. Don't always sit back and think that your brand is just your logo or it's just some fonts. It's just making sure you use the right colors, because branding is so much more than that. And if you join us in the Live Academy program, we help you solidify that branding. We help you make sure that your message is in alignment with your ideal customers. And that way, every piece of content you put out there, and regardless if it's a launch, if it's a big launch, or if it's something much smaller than that, it's just a single piece of copy, everything is tied back to the brand that you are putting out into the world. People trust brands that they can feel like they could be friends with. So I come all the way back to the first question I asked you guys today, and I want you to think about it deeply. Of course, let me know down below what your answer is. If your brand was a person, would you be friends with them? Would you go to their parties? Would you trust them? Would you turn to them if you were in a time of need? That's the answers that I want you to deeply think about with your brand. So thank you guys so much for joining me for this episode of the live show. I will see you back here next week for another episode of the live show. I'll see you on Fridays in the Visibility Hacking group for Friday Night Live. And keep your eyes peeled because we might be sprinkling some more great stuff. And don't forget, there's still spaces left in Alive Academy Summer Camp Edition. If you want into that, just comment Summer Camp down in the comments and we'll be in touch.